This morning, Barry Sternlicht, one of the most famous, well-respected investors in America, went on CNBC, and Andrew Ross Sorkin asked him about Bitcoin and gold. And so here is what Barry said when he was asked.
The dichotomy, though, on the Cathie Wood's view, which is that she believes that there's going to be deflation. At the same time, she's a proponent of crypto. Where are you right now? We have a whole screen of all the different cryptocurrencies effectively to your left.
I own two of those. So, for me, and I think Novogratz has come on your show and talked about it, it's a diversification. And I think what Jamie...
To my left.
Yeah, what Jamie Dimon talked about, I mean, gold is kind of worthless too, and silver, I mean, they have some industrial uses, but they're minor. It's a store of value. Right. And the reason I own Bitcoin is because the U.S. government and every government in the Western Hemisphere is printing money now to the end of time. And this is a finite amount of something, and it can be traded globally. And people have fiat currencies, whether it's in Nigeria, and I'm not picking on Nigeria, I have no idea if they have a fiat currency, or Bolivia or wherever. You can move into something that probably has, that the world has accepted as a substitute for gold. And since it's 18 million float or something like that out of 21, I think Bitcoin it's the biggest. It may not be the one. It's a dumb coin. It has no real purpose other than a store of value, and it's a little crazily volatile. So Ether, which is right below it, I own some of that. That's a programmable Bitcoin. And then there are tons of other coins that are built off of that system. And as Larry also mentioned, I've become very interested in the blockchain technology as a whole and the digital ledger, which is going to change everything. It's just we're probably in inning one of the internet. And I don't know when the internet started, 1990.
Hey Barry,
pretty damn cool. When you see this, basically the two big takeaways I have from watching this is that, one, we obviously are watching a bunch of investors who are not known to be Bitcoin or crypto investors. They don't come out of that world. These are legacy investors who now are starting to understand the value proposition of it. And what's really important is they've already invested, they've allocated capital to the asset. Then on top of that, they now feel comfortable enough that they understand what the value proposition is, why it will either go up or down in value, how they're going to construct their portfolio around it. And when they have that confidence, they then are willing to talk about it publicly. So very, very important to understand that if somebody is just learning about it, they either haven't invested or they won't talk about it publicly. Once they actually understand it, they usually will invest their own money first, then they'll be willing to publicly talk about it. So when you see somebody on television publicly talking about it, they've already done a lot of work. They've put in the time and effort. They understand it. They've allocated capital. They have skin in the game, and then they go and they talk about it. So that is kind of one big takeaway. The second big takeaway was explicitly the comment that the central banks in the Western Hemisphere are going to keep printing till the end of time. That is the model that we are currently in. There is a point of no return. They're stuck. I feel for them. There's nothing else they can do. They have to continue to intervene in markets. They have outlawed bear markets. They have banned market corrections, and they will continue to devalue the currency at whatever rate they need to. That is the world that we live in. And so if that is going to continue, then investors are going to find other places to go and put their wealth. We've seen folks like Ray Dalio talk about cash is trash. We now see Barry Sternlicht talking about the fact that they're going to continue to print until the end of time. And so he explicitly talks about Bitcoin having that finite supply and going ahead and allocating to it. Now, when you start to think of other investors, what is really interesting about Barry is a lot of real estate, and he's very well known for hotels he's invested in, etc. And so you can think about 21 million Bitcoin almost in a way of digital real estate that you can go and actually have the dollar continue to be devalued. And so the asset that you hold will continue to go up in US dollar terms. That is true of stocks, that is true of real estate, that is true of commodities, and of Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. So over long periods of time, the devaluation of the currency drives asset prices up. That's why we see that top 10% continue to get richer and richer and richer. They hold majority of their net worth in assets. Now, what is also interesting about this is that what we saw between October of 2020, when Bitcoin was around $10,000, until March of 2021, we saw Bitcoin go from $10,000 to $64,000. A lot of that was people front-running inflation. The thing about inflation that is really important is that whether it actually ever showed up or not didn't nearly matter as much as the fact that people thought inflation was coming. If you understand how inflation works and you think that there will be high inflation, You try to move your assets before the inflation comes. You try to get into an inflation hedge asset. Be prepared. It's kind of like when a hurricane is coming. What do? You don't wait for the hurricane to be there in the middle, like, oh, I got to go to the store to get milk and bread. No, you go and you get it before the hurricane is supposed to get there so that you are prepared. Same thing with capital flows. And so in October, November, and then into the beginning of 2021, people thought there would be high levels of inflation coming, and they pushed into inflation hedge assets. Bitcoin has gone up over 400% over the last year. Gold is down about 8 or 9%. People quite literally dropped gold, the market cap contracted, and they bought Bitcoin as an inflation hedge. It has served as the best inflation hedge out of all of the inflation hedges that were available. And so if people think that inflation is going to continue to persist, those that already allocated to the inflation hedge asset, they will likely continue to allocate more and more. And then those who missed the opportunity, they now wake up and say, oh, wait a second, I should actually allocate more. And we see this in the on-chain metrics. The people who hold Bitcoin, 85% of Bitcoin has not moved in the last 90 days. And there continues to be more and more people trying to buy. And that is why we have seen since the summer, Bitcoin go from $30,000 to about $55,000, $57,000. Is there's more buyers than sellers, and people are looking, trying to get their hands on a global store of value that can't be controlled by anyone and can't be created out of thin air. John, what do you think about this?
Inflation is obviously here. It's not going anywhere. I think people need to do their research on what they think is a good inflation hedge, whether that's a traditional thing like gold, real estate, or kind of these newer assets like cryptocurrencies. And I think they need to allocate their money accordingly, how they see fit, right? Everyone's in a different position, but a lot of people are getting hurt by inflation. It's not going anywhere. And then we've seen over time, a lot of really smart investors have been more and more allocating parts of their portfolio, some of their businesses into crypto and into Bitcoin specifically. And I think that's really good because it brings more validity to the space, and more people are kind of getting involved. And I haven't seen anyone that was involved in Bitcoin or involved in a lot of cryptocurrency kind of take the step back and actually remove it. People are more pressing the gas pedal.
I thought Barry was a boss on TV this morning.
He is a boss.
He rolled up. He had his shirt half unbuttoned. 60-year-old said gold is worthless. He said there's no utility. He said I own both of those. I own 2 of those. And then he was like, all right, I own Bitcoin and Ethereum. He tried to be cool.
He does not own Dogecoin for the people in the comments asking.
One time, Anthony and I met Barry at a pool party, and he was wearing sunglasses, looking really cool. And I obviously didn't recognize him because I wasn't expecting Barry. And we left, and I told Anthony, I was like, that guy really knew a lot about like Miami real estate. And he was very tan. And he was like, Paulina.
Yeah, he's got an investment firm that has $100 billion.
So Jamie Dimon said that Bitcoin is worthless, and Barry Sternlicht said that gold is worthless. I tend to think Barry is going to be more right than Jamie. Right? Do we agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's like a kind of a no-brainer.
I mean, Jamie's already been proven wrong. So 1-0 Barry.